A cool breeze whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and earth that clung to the countryside just beyond the town's edge. Emma Hayes had always found solace in these quiet moments before dawn, when the world seemed to hold its breath, wrapped in a soft blanket of mist and solitude. Her small cottage sat nestled on the outskirts of this sleepy rural town, a place where the hum of life was measured by the rustling leaves and the occasional call of distant birds. It was here, in this peaceful corner of the world, that Emma carried out her quiet work, tending to injured wildlife, nursing the broken and forgotten back to health with a steady hand and a heart full of empathy. Emma's life had settled into a steady rhythm since she had moved here 3 years ago. She was a woman of gentle habits and few words, known in town as the quiet animal lover who could often be seen with mud-streaked boots and a worn jacket, carrying a battered canvas bag filled with bandages, ointments, and whatever else was needed to ease a creature's suffering. Her days were spent tracking the woodland edges for wounded birds, trapped rabbits, or the occasional fox caught in a snare. Though she lived alone, Emma never felt isolated. The animals she cared for filled her world with purpose and connection. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Yet beneath the surface of this quiet life, there was a yearning, a subtle ache for a deeper connection, not just with the animals she healed, but with the wildness that roamed free beyond the fences of her small property. She often found herself staring past the tree line, imagining the untamed herds that once roamed these lands, the wild horses that had long since vanished from memory. Her heart stirred with a longing she could hardly name, a pull towards something vast and free that seemed to call her from the shadows. This morning was no different. The sky was painted in soft pastels, the first hints of sunlight casting a gentle glow over the rolling fields. Emma wrapped her scarf tighter against the chill and stepped outside, her boots crunching softly on the gravel path. She planned to make her usual rounds, checking on a nest of fledglings she had been watching for signs of injury. The air was crisp and still, the only sound the distant murmur of the creek winding through the valley. As Emma rounded the corner near the old wooden gate that marked the boundary of her property, her breath caught. There, just beyond the gate, lay a wild colt, its chest rising and falling unevenly, legs sprawled awkwardly across the dewy grass. The creature was young, its coat a patchwork of dark and light, matted with mud and leaves. It was clear the colt was struggling, its eyes wide with fear and pain, trembling as if the very effort to breathe was a battle. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of shock and immediate concern flooding through her. She knelt down slowly, careful not to startle the fragile animal further. The colt's wild spirit was evident, even in its weakened state. It flicked its ears nervously, eyes darting. Yet there was a flicker of trust as Emma's voice softened into a low murmur. "It's okay, I'm here. You're not alone." She reached into her bag, pulling out a small bottle of water and a cloth. Gently, she wetted the colt's lips, coaxing it to drink. The animal's tongue flicked tentatively, and for a moment, the wildness between them seemed to bridge, fragile but promising. Emma's mind raced, weighing her options. The nearest veterinary clinic was miles away, and she knew the colt's injuries might not wait that long. The thought of leaving it here, vulnerable and exposed, was unbearable. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she stroked the colt's damp forehead, marveling at the delicate strength beneath its fragile frame. This was no ordinary rescue. There was something raw and untamed about this young horse that stirred something deep within her. A call to protect, to nurture, but also to respect the wild soul it carried. She glanced back at her cottage, where the medical supplies and warmth waited, and made a silent vow to do whatever it took to help this creature find its strength again. The morning sun began to rise higher, casting long shadows across the field as Emma carefully lifted the colt's head, whispering reassurances as she prepared to move it to safety. Her breath came in shallow bursts, but her resolve was firm. This moment, this fragile life at her gate, would mark the beginning of a journey that neither of them could yet understand. As the colt's eyes met hers once more, there was a spark, a flicker of hope in the midst of uncertainty. Emma carried the colt toward the shelter she had hastily arranged near the edge of her garden, a small structure lined with soft hay and blankets scavenged from her home. The wildness of the creature seemed to settle slightly in this quiet, safe space. But the tension remained, a reminder that healing would not come easily. She knelt beside the colt, brushing away stray strands of hair and murmuring soothing words, her hands steady despite the swirl of emotions within her. This was the life Emma had chosen, a life of quiet compassion and steadfast care. Yet today, it felt charged with a new intensity. The wild colt's presence was a stark reminder of the fragile beauty of nature, of the delicate balance between freedom and survival. As the morning deepened, Emma allowed herself a moment to breathe, to simply be present with the creature who had stumbled into her world so unexpectedly. In the days ahead, she knew the challenges would only grow. The colt's injuries were serious, and her own skills, while practiced, were limited. But as she sat there in the soft light of dawn, feeling the warmth of the colt's breath against her skin, Emma felt a quiet determination take root. This was more than a rescue. It was a chance to bridge the gap between the wild and the tamed, between fear and trust. And so, with the first light of morning spilling over the horizon, Emma Hayes prepared to step into a story that would test her courage, her compassion, and her very understanding of what it meant to care for a wild heart in need. The colt's fragile presence at her gate was a call she could not ignore, a beginning that promised both challenge and hope beneath the vast, open sky. The sun had climbed higher now, spilling golden light across the field where the wild colt lay nestled in the makeshift shelter Emma had hurriedly prepared. The morning's chill had given way to a gentle warmth, but the fragile creature remained still, its breathing shallow and uneven. Emma sat beside the colt, her fingers tracing delicate patterns through the soft hay, every muscle in her body taut with concern. The world beyond her small garden gate seemed to fade away, replaced by the intense focus of one life desperately clinging to another. Moments earlier, the colt had collapsed just beyond the gate, a sudden fall that had sent a shiver through Emma's heart. She had been wandering along the edge of her property, her thoughts drifting as she checked the nests and burrows where injured creatures sometimes sought refuge. Then, without warning, the colt had appeared, its wild form faltering, tumbling onto the grass in a heap of raw vulnerability. The sight had struck her like a thunderclap. This was no stray or abandoned farm animal, but a young, untamed spirit caught between survival and surrender. Emma's eyes never left the colt's face, watching the flicker of life in its dark, wide eyes. There was a fierce beauty in the creature's gaze, a wildness that refused to be tamed even in weakness. Its coat was streaked with mud and flecks of dried leaves, evidence of the struggle that had brought it here. One of its front legs lay awkwardly bent, the muscles trembling beneath the skin as if the pain was too sharp to bear. Despite its injuries, the colt's ears flicked nervously at every sound, alert and wary, a reminder of the world it had come from, a world that demanded strength and vigilance. Emma bent closer, speaking softly, her voice barely more than a whisper carried on the morning breeze. "It's all right. I'm here. You're safe now." Her words seemed to settle the colt, if only a little, as its breathing smoothed into a more regular rhythm. She reached into her bag and retrieved a small bottle of water, tilting it gently to the colt's lips. The animal's tongue flicked out hesitantly, lapping at the water with a fragile thirst that spoke of exhaustion and desperation. The moment was heavy with quiet significance. Emma's heart ached at the vulnerability before her, yet it was mingled with a deep awe for the creature's resilience. She had tended to many injured animals before, but none quite like this. Wild, untamed, and so clearly fighting to hold onto life despite the odds. She felt a surge of determination to do everything in her power to help, even if that meant stepping far beyond her usual quiet routine. The decision pressed upon her immediately: call for professional help or attempt to stabilize the colt herself. The nearest veterinary clinic was a good half-hour drive away, and Emma knew the roads well enough to guess that any delay could mean the difference between recovery and tragedy. The colt's fragile state left no room for hesitation. She could already sense the pulse of pain beneath its skin, the subtle tremor that told her this young horse was teetering on the edge. But the thought of leaving the colt alone, vulnerable to the elements and predators, was unbearable. Emma's past experiences with rescue efforts flared in her mind, moments when she had called for help too late, when the creatures she cared for slipped away despite her best efforts. Those memories haunted her, but they also fueled a fierce resolve. This time would be different. This time she would be there every step of the way. Carefully, Emma reached out, her hand steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. She brushed a stray lock of hair from the colt's forehead, her touch gentle and deliberate. The animal's eyes met hers again, wide and shining with a mixture of fear and a tentative trust. It was a silent plea, a fragile bridge between two souls caught in a moment of shared vulnerability. "I'm not going anywhere," Emma promised, her voice soft but unwavering. "We'll get through this together." With painstaking effort, she began to assess the colt's condition, noting the shallow rise and fall of its chest, the way its muscles twitched beneath the thin skin. Its leg was clearly injured, but beyond that, the colt's overall strength seemed to be waning. Emma's mind raced through what she knew: basic first aid, the importance of warmth and hydration, the need to keep the animal calm and still. She rummaged through her bag for supplies, pulling out a clean cloth and some antiseptic ointment. The colt flinched at the touch, a sharp intake of breath that pierced Emma's heart. She worked slowly, speaking in low tones, careful not to overwhelm the young horse. Each gentle movement was a silent promise of care, a balm against the fear that must have gripped the colt's wild spirit. As she tended to the colt's wounds, Emma's thoughts flickered to the wild herds that once roamed these lands, the vast open spaces where horses galloped freely beneath endless skies. She imagined the colt's life before this moment, running with its kin, unburdened by pain or captivity. That life felt distant now, blurred by the harsh reality of injury and survival. Yet beneath the surface of this small garden shelter, something of that freedom still burned bright in the colt's eyes. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped the injured leg with a makeshift bandage, careful not to restrict circulation. The colt shifted nervously, but did not resist, allowing her the fragile access she needed. She poured a small bowl of water, encouraging the animal to drink more, and sat back, watching as it lapped quietly, the tension in its body easing just a fraction. The morning wore on, the sun climbing higher and warming the earth. But Emma remained by the colt's side, unwilling to leave. Her thoughts spun with plans. How to get the colt to a vet, how to provide comfort and care in the meantime, how to bridge the gap between this fragile being and the wildness it still held within. She felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders, but also the quiet strength that came from knowing she was not alone in this fight. The colt's breath steadied, its eyes growing heavy with exhaustion, and Emma allowed herself a moment of hope. This fragile creature, caught at the edge of life and death, had somehow found its way to her gate. A chance encounter that would change everything. As she sat there in the soft light of morning, the world held its breath with her, waiting to see what would come next. Emma sat quietly beside the colt as the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Her hands rested lightly on the worn blanket beneath the animal, eyes fixed on the gentle rise and fall of its chest. The warmth of the day was a balm to her own nerves, yet inside, a storm of uncertainty churned. The colt's fragile state had forced her into a crossroads, a decision that weighed heavily on her heart and mind. She had spent the morning tending to the colt's wounds, offering water and whispering soft reassurances. But now, as the hours stretched on, Emma wrestled with the question that gnawed at her. Should she call for professional help or try to stabilize the colt herself? The answer was not clear. Each option carried its own risks and hopes, and the memory of past failures haunted her thoughts. Emma's glance drifted to the narrow dirt road winding past her gate, the path that led to the nearest veterinary clinic some 30 minutes away. She knew the journey could be rough for the injured colt, bumpy, jarring, and filled with uncertainty. But leaving the colt alone in this vulnerable state was unthinkable. Each breath it took seemed a fragile thread holding life together, and Emma feared that any delay in care might unravel it. Her mind flicked back to a rescue she had attempted years ago. A young fox caught in a trap, its leg broken and bleeding. Despite her efforts and the vet's arrival, the fox had not survived the night. The memory was sharp and painful, a ghost that shadowed her every decision. Emma had vowed then to never let fear paralyze her again, to act decisively when life hung in the balance. Yet the colt was different. It was wild, untamed, and unaccustomed to human touch or confinement. She could feel the tension beneath its skin, the flicker of fear in its eyes whenever she moved too quickly. Capturing it to transport for care would mean breaking that fragile trust she had just begun to build. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I have to try," she whispered, more to herself than to the colt. The promise hung between them, fragile and uncertain. She could not afford to wait. The colt needed help, and she would be the one to give it. Slowly, she reached for her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed the clinic. The line rang through, each second stretching longer than the last. When a voice finally answered, calm and professional, Emma felt a flicker of relief. "This is Emma Hayes," she began, her voice steady despite the knot in her throat. "I found a wild colt just outside my property. It's injured and weak. I need advice and possibly urgent care." The veterinarian on the other end, Dr. Patel, listened carefully as Emma described the colt's condition, the shallow breathing, the injured leg, the signs of exhaustion. Dr. Patel's tone was reassuring, but serious. "It sounds like the colt needs immediate attention," she said. "If you can keep it calm and hydrated, I'll prepare to meet you. We'll do everything we can." Emma's heart quickened. The decision was made. Help was on its way, but the journey was just beginning. She had to prepare the colt for the trip, to steady its nerves for the unknown road ahead. Gently, she began to move around the colt, her movements slow and deliberate. She spoke in low tones, a soft murmur meant to soothe both her own anxiety and the colt's restless spirit. The animal flinched at first, muscles tensing beneath her touch. But as she continued, the wildness in its eyes softened, replaced by a tentative acceptance. Emma worked quickly, wrapping the injured leg with more secure bandaging, careful not to restrict blood flow. She fashioned a makeshift sling from strips of cloth to provide support, drawing on every scrap of knowledge she had gleaned from books and past rescues. The colt shifted nervously, but remained still, as if sensing the urgency in Emma's care. She fetched a small bucket of water, encouraging the colt to drink more. Each sip was a small victory, a glimmer of hope in the uncertain battle ahead. Emma's own hands trembled, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. But she refused to let fear take hold. As the afternoon light deepened, Emma prepared the back of her old pickup truck for transport. She spread blankets to cushion the space, setting up a safe, enclosed area where the colt could lie down without risk of further injury. The vehicle was far from ideal for such a delicate passenger, but it was the only option. The colt's eyes followed her every move, flicking with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Emma knelt beside it, pressing a gentle hand to its neck. "We're going to get you help," she promised. "I won't let anything happen to you." The moment was fragile, balanced on a knife's edge between hope and fear. The colt's wild spirit was still present beneath the pain and exhaustion. And Emma knew that trust had to be earned, not demanded. She allowed herself a moment to meet the creature's gaze, searching for a sign that it believed her words. In that silent exchange, a connection was forged, a bond born of necessity and compassion. Emma felt a surge of determination. No matter how difficult the road ahead, she would be there. She would fight for this wild soul as fiercely as if it were her own. With the truck ready, Emma carefully coaxed the colt toward the open bed. It moved slowly, each step tentative but deliberate, as if testing its own strength. Emma supported its weight, steadying the creature against the sway of her touch. The colt's breath came in ragged gasps, but it did not resist. Once settled, Emma climbed into the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel with a mixture of resolve and nervous energy. The engine rumbled to life, and she pulled onto the dirt road, the truck's tires crunching over gravel as they began the slow journey to the vet. The landscape blurred past the windows, fields stretching wide and green, the occasional cluster of trees swaying gently in the breeze. Emma stole glances at the colt, lying quietly on the blankets, eyes half closed, muscles relaxed slightly in the warmth of the truck. The wildness was still there, a flicker beneath the surface. But for now, the colt was still. Emma's thoughts raced ahead. What would the vet find? Were the injuries worse than she feared? Could this young life be saved? The questions pressed in on her, but beneath them all was a steady current of hope. She reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from the colt's forehead, whispering words of comfort. "Hold on," she urged softly. "We're almost there." The road ahead was uncertain, the path fraught with challenges yet to come. But in this moment, Emma and the colt shared a fragile peace, a quiet understanding that neither was alone. Together, they were stepping into the unknown, bound by trust and the fragile hope of healing. The afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the landscape as Emma guided the truck carefully along the gravel road. The colt lay quietly in the back, nestled among the soft blankets, its breaths shallow but steady. The tension that had gripped Emma's chest since the morning had eased slightly, replaced by a focused determination. She was resolved to see this through, no matter what lay ahead. When she reached the small clearing beside her cottage, Emma gently lifted the colt down from the truck bed, cradling its fragile weight against her. Every movement was deliberate, careful to avoid causing any more pain. The colt's eyes flickered open briefly, meeting hers with a wary but trusting gaze. Despite its exhaustion, there was a spark, a flicker of recognition that this was a safe place, for now. Emma had already begun preparing a sheltered area in her garden, a space she hoped would serve as a temporary refuge until the vet could arrive. She had cleared the ground and lined it with fresh hay, soft and warm against the cool evening air. As the colt was settled onto the bedding, a mixture of relief and apprehension surged through Emma. This was only the beginning, the first step in what would surely be a long journey. The wildness of the colt was still evident. Its muscles twitched beneath the thin skin, and its ears flicked nervously at every sound. But there was also a tentative calm as it accepted the comfort Emma offered. She sat beside it, her hand resting lightly on its flank, feeling the faint pulse beneath the skin. The rhythmic beat was a fragile promise, a sign that life still held on. Emma reached into the bag she carried everywhere, pulling out a small bowl filled with water. Slowly, she lifted it to the colt's lips, encouraging it to drink. The animal's tongue flicked out, hesitating, then lapping with a quiet thirst. Each sip was a small victory, an affirmation that the colt was willing to trust her, at least for now. As the sun dipped lower, the sky blushed with soft hues of pink and orange. Emma's thoughts drifted to the wild herds that had once roamed these lands, their powerful forms galloping beneath endless skies. She imagined the colt running free, its spirit unbroken, before fate had dealt this cruel blow. The contrast between that freedom and the fragile state before her was stark. Yet Emma felt a deep connection growing, one forged in compassion and quiet resolve. She spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe here. I'll do everything I can to help you heal." The colt's eyes met hers again, wide and shining with an unspoken understanding. It was a delicate bond, fragile yet profound, linking two lives in a moment suspended between fear and hope. Emma's mind raced with plans. She knew the vet's arrival was still hours away, and she would need to provide care and comfort through the night. She gathered fresh bandages and ointments, cleaning the colt's wounds with gentle hands. The animal flinched occasionally, but did not resist, as if sensing the kindness beneath her touch. She worked methodically, dressing the injured leg with careful precision, ensuring the bandage was snug but not tight. The colt's muscles twitched beneath her fingers, a reminder of the pain that lingered beneath the surface. Emma's heart ached, but she pushed the feelings aside, focusing on the tasks at hand. As dusk settled, the garden grew quiet, the sounds of the countryside fading into a gentle chorus of crickets and rustling leaves. Emma remained by the colt's side, offering warmth and reassurance. She stroked its coat softly, murmuring soothing words, creating a sanctuary of calm in a world that had suddenly become uncertain. The colt shifted slightly, resting its head against Emma's knee, a gesture of trust that touched her deeply. It was a silent acknowledgement, a fragile acceptance of the care being offered. Emma's eyes welled with tears, not of sorrow, but of quiet gratitude for this moment of connection. Her thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The years spent caring for animals, the quiet days of solitude, the unspoken yearning for something more. Everything converged in this fragile life before her. The colt was more than a rescue. It was a symbol of hope, a bridge between the wild and the human. a reminder of the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability. Emma rose slowly, moving to prepare a small meal for herself. She knew the coming days would demand all her energy and focus. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of rest, sitting near the Colt and watching as the stars began to twinkle overhead. The night wrapped around them like a protective cloak, a silent promise that they were not alone. As she settled beside the shelter, Emma felt a quiet resolve settle in her bones. The road ahead would be uncertain and challenging, but she was ready to face it. The Colt's presence had awakened something within her, a fierce determination to nurture, to protect, and to heal. Together, they waited for the dawn and the promise it held, the arrival of help, the chance for recovery, and the fragile hope of a future where the wild spirit could run free once more. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the curtains of Emma's modest living room, casting a pale glow over the small space. Outside, the world was waking slowly, the chorus of birdsong mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a cool morning breeze. Yet inside, Emma's mind was restless, filled with anticipation and quiet worry. Today was the day the vet would arrive, the moment she had both hoped for and dreaded since the Colt's sudden appearance. She moved with practiced calm, preparing a small bag of supplies to take outside: bandages, antiseptic, towels, and the few medications she had on hand. Her hands trembled only slightly as she gathered the things she might need, driven by a fierce determination to face whatever awaited. Each step was measured, each breath steady, as she made her way to the garden where the Colt lay. The makeshift shelter, now bathed in morning light, was a small oasis amid the sprawling fields. The Colt stirred as Emma approached, lifting its head slowly and meeting her gaze with eyes still wide but less fearful. There was a fragile trust there, a silent bond forged in the quiet hours of care and compassion. Emma's heart clenched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Moments later, the distant rumble of a vehicle broke the morning stillness. Emma's breath caught as she glanced toward the road, spotting Dr. Patel's familiar truck winding along the gravel path. Relief washed over her in waves. Help had arrived. She rose quickly, steadying herself, and moved to meet the vet. Dr. Patel stepped out of the truck with a calm confidence that immediately grounded the tension Emma felt. Her eyes took in the scene, the Colt resting in the hay, Emma's anxious presence, the careful preparations made in anticipation. "Good morning, Emma," she said gently. "Let's take a look at your patient." Together, they approached the Colt, whose ears flicked nervously at the new presence. Emma stayed close, offering quiet words of reassurance, as Dr. Patel began her examination. The vet's hands were skilled and sure, moving gently over the Colt's body, checking for injuries, assessing muscle tone, and listening to its labored breathing. "The leg is swollen and tender," Dr. Patel noted, her voice professional but tinged with concern. "There's likely some internal damage, possibly a fracture or severe sprain." She paused, her expression thoughtful as she continued the examination. "We'll need x-rays to be certain. But for now, rest and immobilization are crucial." Emma nodded, absorbing the information with a steady resolve. She had expected this, yet hearing it aloud made the reality more tangible. Dr. Patel's thorough approach reassured her. This was a woman who understood both the science and the delicate nature of wild animals. The vet then turned her attention to the Colt's overall condition. "It's weak, dehydrated, and likely exhausted from the trauma," she explained. "We'll administer fluids and pain relief, and I'll monitor for signs of infection or complications." She pulled a syringe from her kit, preparing to give the Colt a gentle injection, The colt flinched slightly, but remained calm. The trust it had begun to build with Emma extending to the vet. Emma assisted as Dr. Patel worked, her hands steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. She cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, helped secure new bandages, and offered fresh water to the colt, who drank gratefully. The moments were a blend of clinical precision and quiet compassion, a delicate balance that Emma admired. As the examination continued, Dr. Patel asked questions about the colt's discovery, where Emma had found it, how long it had been injured, and what care had been provided so far. Emma recounted the morning's events, her voice steady but tinged with lingering concern. "It's clear you've done a remarkable job stabilizing the colt," Dr. Patel said. "Your quick actions likely made a significant difference." The praise warmed Emma, a quiet affirmation of the bond she had already formed with this wild creature. The discussion then turned to plans for the colt's care. Dr. Patel recommended keeping it in the sheltered garden area for the time being, with strict limits on movement to prevent further injury. She emphasized the importance of regular monitoring and careful handling, especially given the colt's wild nature. Emma absorbed each detail, mentally preparing for the long days ahead. The vet's presence was a lifeline, a bridge between the fragile hope of recovery and the practical realities of treatment. Before leaving, Dr. Patel scheduled a follow-up visit and arranged for the necessary X-rays to be done at the clinic. She offered Emma a small booklet on equine first aid and some contact numbers for emergencies. "You're not alone in this," she assured. "We'll work together to give this colt the best chance." As Dr. Patel packed up her equipment and prepared to leave, Emma returned to the colt's side. She knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from its damp forehead. The colt's eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition passing between them. It was a quiet moment, heavy with unspoken promises and the fragile hope that healing was possible. Emma felt a surge of gratitude. For the vet's expertise, for the trust the colt had shown, and for the chance to be part of something greater than herself. This was more than a rescue. It was a test of patience, courage, and compassion. As the morning light grew stronger, Emma settled beside the colt once more, ready to face the challenges ahead. She whispered softly, "We're in this together. I won't let you down." The path was uncertain, and the road to recovery long. But in that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the countryside and the weight of shared trust, Emma found a renewed sense of purpose. The wild colt, fragile yet fierce, had become a beacon, a reminder of the delicate balance between care and courage and the enduring power of hope. Days slipped by in a rhythm both quiet and intense, the kind of tempo that only comes when every moment is measured by care and vigilance. Emma found herself tethered to the colt's side, each sunrise and sunset marked by the steady routine of tending to its fragile body and fragile spirit. The garden, once just a patch of earth surrounding her cottage, had transformed into a sanctuary, a small world where trust was built on gentle hands and whispered promises. The colt's breathing, once shallow and uneven, began to steady under Emma's watchful eyes. Each morning, she measured its pulse, checked its temperature, and adjusted the bandages with meticulous care. The swelling in the injured leg slowly diminished, and though the colt still favored the limb, there was a subtle shift, a tentative strength returning beneath the surface. Emma felt a cautious hope bloom within her, a fragile thread weaving through the uncertainty. But the healing was not just physical. The colt's wild spirit, so fierce and untamed at first, showed signs of a growing bond with Emma. It would lift its head when she approached, watching her with alert eyes that held a flicker of recognition. Sometimes, when the light was just right. The colt would nudge her hand gently, a silent gesture of trust that sent warmth through Emma's heart. She spoke to the colt often, her voice soft and steady, sharing stories of the countryside, the wild herds that once roamed free, and the quiet beauty of the land they now shared. "You're stronger every day," she would say, brushing the coarse hair from its forehead. "We're going to get you back on your feet." The journey was far from easy. Nights brought restlessness, whimpers and shifting that reminded Emma of the colt's pain and fear. She would sit through those long hours, offering quiet comfort, a steady presence against the darkness. There were moments when the colt flinched, startled by shadows or sudden noises, and Emma learned to move with patience, understanding the delicate balance between healing and the colt's wild instincts. As the days flowed onward, Emma's dedication deepened. She adjusted her own life around the colt's needs, postponing errands and setting aside solitude for the companionship that grew between them. Her neighbors noticed the change. A woman once reserved, now animated by purpose, her eyes bright with a fierce love for the creature she nurtured. The local veterinary clinic became a familiar point of contact. Dr. Patel returned regularly, monitoring the colt's progress, offering guidance and encouragement. Each visit was a mixture of relief and tension, as X-rays revealed the slow but steady mending of bones and tissues. The vet's expertise was a steady anchor, but Emma knew the true healing required more than medicine. It demanded trust, patience, and the quiet work of rebuilding confidence. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the leaves, Emma sat beside the colt, watching as it took a tentative step forward. The movement was unsteady but deliberate, a small victory etched in the careful rhythm of recovery. The colt paused, muscles trembling, then placed its weight again, eyes meeting Emma's with a spark of something new. Resilience. Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, a mixture of joy and relief. She reached out, her hand steady as she stroked the colt's neck. "See? You're doing it. You're coming back." The bond between them deepened with every passing day. The colt began to follow Emma's movements, its curiosity growing alongside its strength. It sought her company, nuzzling her hand or resting its head against her side in moments of quiet trust. Emma found herself speaking not just to the colt, but to the wildness it embodied, an untamed spirit softened by care, but never broken. Yet, beneath the progress, a tension lingered. Emma knew the colt's true home was the wild, the open fields and rolling hills where it belonged. The thought of keeping it confined, no matter how gentle the care, stirred a quiet ache within her. She grappled with this conflict daily, the desire to protect clashing with the knowledge that freedom was the colt's birthright. For now, the colt remained in the sheltered garden, its world expanding slowly beyond the boundaries of the makeshift refuge. Emma watched as it explored, tentative steps growing bolder, the wildness flickering beneath the surface, like a flame waiting to be kindled. Their days were filled with small triumphs and quiet moments, a shared journey marked by resilience and hope. Emma's life, once defined by solitude and routine, was now intertwined with the colt's fragile path toward healing. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between care and freedom, trust and instinct, the wild and the tamed. As evening settled and the sky deepened into twilight, Emma sat beside the colt, her hand resting gently on its flank. The creature's breath was steady now, the muscles beneath its coat strong and sure. In that moment, beneath the vast expanse of stars, Emma felt a quiet certainty that this bond, forged in patience and compassion, was the beginning of something profound. The colt was healing, not just in body, but in spirit. And Emma, too, was transformed, her heart opened by the fragile trust of a wild creature, her life enriched by the shared journey of hope and resilience. The morning air was crisp and clear as Emma awaited Dr. Patel's arrival. The sky, a pale blue canvas brushed with soft clouds. Over the past weeks, the routine of care had settled into a rhythm. Yet today held a particular weight. She knew the vet's return would bring answers. Answers that might shift the fragile balance of hope she had nurtured since the Colt's collapse. When Dr. Patel's truck rumbled down the gravel path, Emma's heart tightened with a mix of anticipation and unease. She met the vet at the garden gate, where the Colt lay nestled in the hay, its coat gleaming faintly in the morning light. The animal lifted its head as they approached, eyes alert but calm, a testament to the healing that had taken root. Dr. Patel's expression was thoughtful as she crouched beside the Colt, her hands gentle but thorough in their examination. She ran her fingers along the injured leg, noting the subtle changes, the reduced swelling, the tentative strength returning to the muscles. Yet beneath the surface, there was a complexity that demanded closer scrutiny. "We've made good progress," she began, turning to Emma with a measured tone. "But the X-rays revealed something we need to discuss." She paused, assessing Emma's face, searching for a steady resolve beneath the worry. Emma nodded, bracing herself. "What did you find?" "There's an underlying genetic condition," Dr. Patel explained, her voice soft but firm. "It affects the Colt's bone density and joint strength. Essentially, the bones are more fragile than normal, which explains why the injury was so severe and why recovery may be more complicated." Emma's breath caught, a cold wave washing over her. The words hung heavy between them, twisting the narrative she had hoped to write for this young life. A genetic condition, a hidden fragility that could undermine every effort, every moment of care. Dr. Patel continued, "It's a condition that could threaten the Colt's long-term survival, especially if it faces the demands of the wild. We'll need to monitor it closely and consider how best to manage its health moving forward." The weight of the news settled over Emma like a dense fog. She looked down at the Colt, whose eyes met hers with an unspoken trust that now felt even more precious and fragile. In that moment, reality pressed in, the delicate balance between hope and harsh truth, between the dreams she held and the challenges ahead. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. "What does this mean for the Colt's future?" Dr. Patel's gaze was steady. "It means we have to be realistic. The Colt may never be able to live fully in the wild, at least not without significant risk. But with careful management, it can still have a good quality of life. It will require ongoing care, limited stress, and protection from injury." The words echoed in Emma's mind. A future shaped not by freedom, but by caution and care. Yet beneath the sorrow, a spark of determination flickered. This Colt had survived against the odds once. Perhaps it could continue to do so with the right support. Emma swallowed hard, her hands clenched into fists. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said firmly. "It's not about where it lives, but how we care for it." Dr. Patel smiled softly, admiration in her eyes. "That's the spirit we need. It won't be easy, but you're not alone." Together, they devised a plan, a regimen of care that balanced the Colt's needs with its natural instincts. Dr. Patel instructed Emma on specialized feeding, gentle exercise, and signs to watch for that might indicate pain or stress. They discussed the possibility of future treatments and the importance of regular checkups. As the vet packed up her equipment, Emma felt the weight of responsibility settle more heavily than ever. This was no longer a simple rescue. It was a lifelong commitment, a promise to protect a fragile, wild heart against unseen dangers. Returning to the colt's side, Emma knelt and brushed a hand through its mane. The animal nuzzled her palm, a quiet gesture of trust that strengthened her resolve. She whispered, "We'll face this together, no matter what." The genetic diagnosis shaped the days that followed, coloring every decision with cautious hope. Emma adjusted her care, mindful of the colt's vulnerabilities, yet determined to nurture its spirit. The bond between them deepened, forged in adversity and unwavering love. Though the path ahead was uncertain, Emma found solace in the quiet moments. The soft nuzzle of the colt's muzzle, the gentle warmth of its breath, the flicker of resilience in its eyes. Together, they navigated the delicate dance of healing and hope, their journey a testament to the enduring power of compassion. The sun filtered through the lacework of branches, casting mottled shadows over the small enclosure where the colt had slowly begun to reclaim its strength. Emma sat beside the young horse, her fingers tracing gentle patterns along its neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath the skin. Each day brought subtle changes, the softening of a muscle here, the easing of a tension there. And with those changes came a deepening bond that transcended words. The colt's wild spirit, once fierce and guarded, now flickered with tentative warmth in Emma's presence. It would nuzzle her hand with a delicate curiosity, follow her movements with bright eyes, and sometimes, when the afternoon sun warmed the earth just right, it would rest its head against her shoulder in a rare moment of trust. These small gestures were a balm to Emma's heart, reminders that beneath the fragility lay a soul capable of connection. Yet, alongside the growing companionship, Emma grappled with an internal struggle that shadowed every interaction. The colt was healing, but was it healing toward captivity or freedom? The question hung heavily in the air, a delicate tension between the desire to protect and the call of the wild that pulsed in the animal's veins. She found herself walking the boundary of the garden, gazing toward the distant hills where wild herds once roamed. The open field stretched like a promise, a reminder of the life the colt had been born to lead. Emma's heart ached with the knowledge that the colt's future was uncertain, that its fragile body might never withstand the untamed freedom it once knew. One evening, as the sky blushed with the soft hues of sunset, Emma sat beside the colt, her voice low and steady. "I want you to be free," she whispered. "But I also want you to be safe." The colt lifted its head, eyes reflecting the fading light, as if understanding the words spoken between them. Their days unfolded in a delicate dance of trust. Emma continued her careful care, feeding, tending to wounds, and watching for signs of pain or stress, while also encouraging the colt to explore the boundaries of its small world. She laid out fresh hay and water, spoke softly to soothe restless moments, and marveled at the resilience beneath the surface. Sometimes, the colt would take tentative steps toward the gate, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air beyond. Emma held her breath, torn between the hope that it would one day run free again and the fear that such freedom might be beyond reach. The wildness within the colt was never far from the surface. It would startle at sudden sounds, ears flicking back in alertness, muscles coiling with instinctive readiness. Yet with Emma's presence, those moments of tension softened, replaced by a growing acceptance of safety. Emma knew that keeping the colt confined, no matter how lovingly, was a compromise, a temporary bridge between injury and independence. She wrestled with the question of when, or if, the time would come to open the gate and let the colt return to the world beyond. The dilemma deepened as she observed the colt's behavior. It was curious and intelligent, learning quickly, Yet its body remained vulnerable. The genetic condition diagnosed by Dr. Patel cast a long shadow, reminding Emma that freedom carried risks the colt might not survive. Despite the uncertainty, their bond flourished. Emma found herself sharing not only care, but companionship. Quiet moments in the garden, the warmth of shared sunrises, and the comfort of mutual trust. The colt responded in kind, its presence a steadying force in her life. One afternoon, as a gentle breeze stirred the leaves, Emma spoke aloud to the colt, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and sorrow. "You belong to the wild, but you belong to me too. We'll find a way." The journey was far from over, and the path ahead remained shrouded in questions. Yet, in those moments of quiet connection, Emma understood that healing was not just about mending wounds. It was about honoring the spirit beneath, fragile but unbroken. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between care and freedom, trust and instinct, captivity and wildness. The colt's recovery was a testament to resilience, and Emma's devotion a reflection of profound love. As twilight deepened and stars began to twinkle overhead, Emma sat beside the colt, her hand resting gently on its flank. The creature stirred softly, a quiet presence that spoke of hope and possibility. In the fragile space between earth and sky, human and wild, Emma and the colt shared a bond that transcended words, a silent promise to face whatever came next, side by side. The morning sun spilled over the rolling hills, casting golden light across the garden where the colt had made its tentative home. Emma stood near the gate, her breath catching as she watched the young horse step hesitantly toward the open world beyond. The moment had arrived. The culmination of weeks spent nursing wounds, building trust, and grappling with the weight of impossible choices. The colt paused at the threshold, muscles taut with uncertainty, nostrils flaring as it breathed in the scent of freedom. Its eyes met Emma's, dark and wide, reflecting both fear and hope. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath with them, suspended between past pain and future possibility. Emma's heart ached, a tangled weave of pride and sorrow tightening in her chest. This was the moment she had both longed for and dreaded, the moment to let go, to release the wild spirit back into the world it was born to roam. She stepped forward slowly, her voice soft and steady. "Go on. You're ready." The colt lingered, muscles trembling beneath its coat. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, it bolted through the gate, hooves pounding against the earth as it galloped toward the distant ridge where the wild herd waited. The wind caught its mane, a flowing banner of freedom as it raced across the open fields. Emma watched, tears streaming down her face, a bittersweet ache settling deep within her. The colt's wild heart had reclaimed its place beneath the sky, and yet a piece of Emma's own spirit seemed to follow in its wake. Days passed, and the garden felt emptier without the colt's presence. Emma returned to her routines, the quiet of her cottage a stark contrast to the vibrant energy that had once filled the space. Yet the bond they had forged lingered, a silent thread woven through memory and hope. Then, one afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the shadows lengthened, Emma spotted a familiar figure at the edge of the property. The colt stood there, its coat gleaming in the fading light, a foal at its side. It was a quiet, unspoken reunion, a testament to the enduring connection between human and wild. Emma's heart swelled with a complex joy, a reminder that some bonds transcend distance and time. The colt, now a mother, had returned not just as a creature of the wild, but as a bridge between worlds. She stepped outside, her voice carrying across the field in a gentle call. The colt lifted its head, ears flicking forward, and for a moment their eyes met again, a shared understanding passing between them. In that moment, Emma knew their story was far from over. It was a story of hope and healing, of trust and letting go, a story that would continue to unfold beneath the vast, open sky. Months had passed since the colt had disappeared over the ridge, a wild silhouette against the fading light. Emma found herself drawn back to the quiet rhythms of her life on the edge of the countryside. Her days marked by the familiar tasks of nurturing wounded creatures and tending to the small sanctuary she had created. Yet beneath the calm veneer, the memory of the colt, now Spirit as she had come to call her, remained a steady pulse in Emma's heart. The experience had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The fragile trust she had built with Spirit, the long nights of care and quiet companionship, and the bittersweet farewell had opened a door within Emma. A deeper connection to the wild world she had always admired from afar. She found herself advocating quietly for the protection of wild equines, sharing the story of Spirit with neighbors and local conservation groups, hoping to inspire others to see the value in preserving these untamed spirits. One crisp morning, as Emma walked the narrow path along the ridge near her home, a familiar sound carried on the breeze, a soft, distant whinny. Her heart quickened as she paused, scanning the horizon. There, emerging from the shadows of the trees, was Spirit, her coat shining under the morning sun, accompanied by a lively foal trotting closely at her side. Emma stood still, breath caught in awe and gratitude. Spirit's eyes met hers across the yacht's distance, filled with recognition and a quiet bond that spoke louder than words. The foal's curious gaze flicked between Emma and its mother, a new generation born of wild freedom and human kindness. In that moment, Emma felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun with a fallen colt at her gate had blossomed into something greater, a testament to resilience, trust, and the enduring power of connection. Spirit's return was a living symbol of hope, bridging the delicate line between the wild and the cared for, the untamed and the nurtured. Emma raised a hand in greeting, a silent salute to the wild spirit that had taught her so much about love and letting go. As she watched Spirit and her foal disappear into the vast expanse of the valley, Emma felt a quiet peace settle within her, a reassurance that some bonds, forged in courage and compassion, transcend distance and time. The story of Spirit was not just one of rescue and recovery. It was a reflection of the healing that comes when two souls meet across the divide of worlds. Emma knew that true love sometimes means letting go, and as she listened to the fading whinny carried on the wind, she lifted her coffee cup in salute to the wild mare who had forever changed her life. In the months and years to come, Emma continued her work with renewed purpose, her heart forever touched by the wild spirit that had once collapsed at her gate. Spirit's visits became a cherished rhythm, a reminder of the delicate balance between human care and nature's freedom. A bond that, though unspoken, was as enduring as the open sky.